The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara Payan. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we're having a very special episode. We are actually at Huckleberry Hill Farm, and we are doing a series of podcast episodes so that we can talk about the farmers, because without the farmers, we would not be here. We would not have cannabis. We would not have products. We would not have had these conversations about legalization and policy. And so let's take it back to where it all starts. Today, I have Johnny Casali, who has generously hosted today. We'll also have Dylan Mattole from Mattole Valley Sungrown, and from Ridgeline Farms, Jason Gellman. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having us on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all three of you, were you farmers during the 215 times during medicinal, or when did you all start and what got you to do it? Maybe we could start with Dylan.
Yes, I was a farmer during 215 days, and I was born and raised here in this community. So, growing up, my dad grew weed, so it was just kind of part of life. And then, moved away, had some other adventures in life, and then came back in the mid 2000s and started growing and myself, and here we are.
Jason, how about you?
I've lived in Humboldt County my whole life. Second generation farmer. I learned from my dad as well, and been growing my whole life. I've been here, just watching all the different eras of weed, and right now, we're in a whole different time from when we started when we were young, and it's changing fast.
Johnny?
Yeah, I grew up here on this piece of property that we're sitting at today, and unlike both of these gentlemen, I learned how to grow cannabis from my mom, and really started back in the late 70s, early 80s, and really was a part of my life really ever since then, except when I had a little misstep and I had to go away and do a little bit of time for a little bit, but then came back and after probation kind of jumped right back into it and became permitted with the county and the state of California.
I think that's one of the things that we really have to talk about. When people think of craft farmers, they don't understand that, especially when we're looking at some of the best cultivators in our state that are Sungrown, these are multi-generation farms. And one of the things that brought me great joy when I first started working in cannabis was the fact that for the first time it seemed like farmers were actually making what they deserved with what they were growing. Because I grew up from a family of farmers where it was, produce. And eventually it was growing for yourself because there really wasn't any money in it. So my family members went to go work in the mines or for the railroads, but they would still keep their family farms just for the family. And the way that things are changing now in cannabis, we're doing exactly the same thing that we did in the non-euphoric agricultural world, where it's become extraordinarily corporatized, and it's really hard for small family farms to keep going. And when we're looking at, the laws here in California, when they decided at the very last minute to change the acreage, it was really, I know that the choice was made for not extraordinarily big businesses, not corporate, but it's what opened up the doors for corporate to come in and really change the landscape of cultivation. What was, and whoever wants to chime in, please do, but when were you starting to kind of see some of the warning signs of how things are going to change?
I mean, I think that most of us knew from the first conversations about legalization that things were going to change. The first initiative didn't pass in California and didn't have support in this community. But on the second round, I think there was more a feeling of like, this is happening, and so we have to engage and get involved, and otherwise it's going to be done completely out of our control, and we're definitely going to lose. So from day one, there was eyes pretty wide open, I think, at least here with these farmers in this community, that this is going to be difficult. These rules weren't made for us. We saw it in that 11th hour, regulation change. That's when I think it was really crystal clear to all of us what game we were in and how the cards were stacked against us.
Yeah, and for me, I agree with all that. It was a trade-off. I really didn't want to become a permitted farm and deal with about, trying to run a business. But the trade-off was being able to wake up in the morning, not worried about a convoy coming up my driveway and having to go through some of the things I went through in the past and not having to put my family through that again. And the reality of it was that it was always going to be the small farmer against corporate cannabis, and kind of built a business plan, if there is such one here, on how to address that. And, we can talk about that a little bit later. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so, you have to understand a lot of us came from families that really, we weren't against the government, but like our families didn't, they came here as back to landers. They didn't want to be really, in the spotlight. They didn't want to follow all the rules. They wanted to live their life on the land. And so, I grew up with a family that was very skeptical of the government and of all the, the rules and how the regulations basically. And so, yeah, when it was up on the ballot and we kind of had an idea it was going to pass, we kind of knew that was the beginning of the end of our, our culture. And really, we all voted no, but it passed. And for me, as having my house raided multiple times as a kid and knowing how that affected me and my sisters, I didn't want that for my children. And so the positive side was, I said, I'm going to try this out and, see how it goes. And maybe it'd give my kids a different life so they wouldn't have to lie about what their parents do for a living. And so with that came, I'll say with the positives, you get to see our banners in, the basketball courts, on the baseball fields, on the back of kids' jerseys, and, it's so stuff like that is really special, and that is a really cool thing. And with the negative, well, obviously our town is hurting and our community is in dire straits right now. It's a whole community losing their main income. I would say about 90% of their income is devastating. So,
dude, are you getting choked up? I never see you get choked up. Hold on, that's my line.
It's real.
No, I mean, that's one thing that I noticed, because coming through here, like, I've been traveling through this area since the 90s and going into the towns, and it's like just seeing a lot of the storefronts that are closed and how things have changed. Or even the other year when we went up to go see Tina Gordon and driving up and seeing that little store that's there for everybody on the hill. Oh. Yeah. Is it still open?
It's barely. It's open because he loves the community.
Yeah.
But they are deeply in debt.
See,
Yep.
that just shouldn't be happening. And for me, when we were looking at legalization, the reason that I voted for it at that time was because it seemed like every time legalization came up on the ballot, there were more people that had not been invested before, but were feeling brave enough to get involved because there was greed behind it, and the greedy gets putting their fingers in the pie. And I figured that the next time it came on the ballot, it would be even worse. So let's get it through and see what we can fix that's wrong with it, because we all knew that there were some big problems with what they're proposing with legalization.
Yeah, and I think what's really important to understand about the Emerald Triangle, and especially southern Humboldt, was, when we were all growing cannabis, this remote area that we lived in, we didn't rely on the government, or we didn't even rely on the local supervisors to really give us money to build things. We built this area. We built the schools in the hills. We built the technical rescue teams and the volunteer fire departments, and all the infrastructure you see here today was really from us reaping the benefits of the prices back in the days. And we always took care of each other. It was never about one of us, and it was always about all of us. And now with the turn in the marketplace, when you see the doors closed in Garberville and in Honeydew and up in Harris, like you were talking about, it's because we're all suffering.
Don't you feel like the community was so much tighter back then from all of us working together? And it wasn't like, this person's doing great, this person isn't. There was none of that. We all worked together for the greater cause.
Yeah, I think, you hear a lot of talk and, about legacy and this, who's a legacy farmer. And the reality is that this whole community, that was the legacy. Like, the reason that such good product came out of here was because, like Jason said, everybody cooperated. The skill set, just like in other farming communities in America, the knowledge was shared, resources were shared. So there was a very non-competitive and a very cooperative style of business happening, and legalization, and we still operate like that here. We actually have a very strong small trade association in Humboldt County, and we try to work together, but of course, it's now not just the law enforcement we're hiding from, it's this big business and just the regulations and the whole system, which, frankly, the system isn't working and is completely broken. There's no other way to put it than that.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys are on LinkedIn at all, but all you have to do is spend a couple minutes on LinkedIn and see like how divisive things have gone when people are coming from the outside, getting involved, and instead of taking part and sharing their skills, they're coming in and creating division. And it's like, it's a hard thing because there are people who have come in with the best of intentions, wanting to lend their skills to help prop up all of the good things that we've all enjoyed in this. But then for every one person that does that, it seems like there are three that come in with this corporate pirate mentality that we really have to change the way that is, because we're going to eat ourselves alive. When you look at the cohesiveness that you have as a community and as growers, what do you think can be done together to change policy and help create a stronger legacy program?
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, honestly, I'm thinking that's really Dylan's. That's where, for me, how I would say me and Johnny, we sit there and we get our name out there as far as we can. Try to get Humboldt County crafts, sun-grown or not, but just craft cannabis to the world and let people know we're here. And that really goes with all Emerald Triangle. I feel like Dylan is really, he fights. He's up there at the, the meetings, and he's doing it at a whole nother level. It's really fun to watch because he's such a good talker in front of the community like that. Like, I can't do that, So I think there's multiple different ways. The way I'm going about it is just really trying to represent our area the best I can, and, let people know we're still here and we're still growing the best weed in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's the legend still lives on. It doesn't go away. Like anytime I go outside the state and we start talking about cannabis, it's always, Mendocino, Humboldt, the Emerald Triangle. People don't talk about Trinity as much because they don't know as much about that, even though there's amazing flowers being grown up there as well. But I think, especially like Johnny, with you, opening up your farm to tours and everything, it helps create a greater conversation and get people more engaged and excited. And also realizing that, it's a plant. It's euphoric, but it's produce when you really look at it. And there are real people growing this. And just, I was watching the video the other day of Rose walking through the rows with her gong, and just, there's so much more to it than people could ever think. And for the people who are consuming, I don't think the regulators understand how personal and emotional it is for them to have the flowers, the edibles, what have you, that work for them, that create comfort and stability in their lives.
Elevate your brand with iSpire, the global leader in vape technology with over 1,000 patents worldwide. Our innovative iSpire 1 simplifies your process with self-sealing hardware and automated filling. No capping, no hassle. For brands ready to go to market, our iSpire signature devices offer premium, customizable solutions. And as proud members of NCAA, NORML, the Origins Council, and the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, iSpire is committed to advocacy and social justice. Learn more today at getispire.com.
Yeah, that was a great video that Rose and I did together. And really, it's always a constant battle to educate the consumer. I think the most important thing for them to understand is knowing their farmer, knowing who Dylan is or Jason is or Soul Spirit in Trinity County are. There's a lot of amazing flower being grown in the Emerald Triangle, in the state of California. But really, if you can understand, Dylan's out there every single morning touching every single plant and every single leaf, and maybe Rose isn't out there with the gong yet, but in his own way, he's interacting with every single plant he's growing on his farm. And that just doesn't happen in corporate cannabis because it's about the bottom dollar. It's about this many hours and this many in this area or whatever. And so the more time and the more energy that's spent and given to this plant, the better it's going to give you, what it's going to give you back. And so I think it's important if you want to put something in your body and make yourself feel amazing, you have to know your farmer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I noticed because I've been in a lot of different grows. I've been in super industrial grows. I've been in small farms. And I remember thinking, it was fascinating going into this large industrial greenhouse grow where they are actually taking samples of the runoff water to see what the plants were using, what they weren't, and the nutrients, and like tweaking it that way. So from a scientific perspective, I was like, that's fascinating. But it's not the same feel as going into a home, or not a home, but a smaller craft grow, the feeling that you get walking through those plants.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting out of that, I think you're getting two different products. So it's almost even hard to have that conversation of it being the same product because it is totally different. Those are people that have investors that have to answer to investment dollars and returns and those kind of things. It's not about that for us. It's about, putting out the best possible product we can and learning how to still, after 45 years, learning something new every year and calling Dylan or calling Jason and saying, hey, I'm seeing this, or my plants look like this. What do you think? And picking each other's brains, sharing that information, and just, it's a challenge within ourselves to get better and to do the plant justice, I think, is a better way of putting it.
Yeah, and the cultivars that you're working with, it's not the same old, because nothing against gelato. I enjoy it from time to time, but you can only have so many gelato crosses in your life. And I really liken it to, you have your hothouse tomatoes, which are good if it's in the middle of winter and that's all you've got to choose from. And then you look at a beautiful heirloom tomato that you got from the farmer's market. There's no comparing the two. And the hothouse tomato might be satisfying in the middle of winter, but it kind of tastes a little mealy when you compare it to something that's come out of somebody's farm that's been grown with love and care.
Yeah, when you slice open or bite into a heirloom tomato, most people will describe an experience, whether it's like reminds you of, your grandma's garden or, it takes you somewhere because there's essence of that place where it was grown in that product. And the same thing is with our weed. It's like it's not it's not just a genetic, it's the history that comes with that and what's been built into that. And that does express and come out. And, it's just amazing, and that is something that can't be duplicated. The awards are showing it too. I mean, Johnny's product, kind of reigned at the Emerald Cup this year across a quite a variety of different manufacturers with different products. And so, you can't look at that any other way than, wow, there's something going on here.
Oh, Johnny got a lot of exercise that day. You're like going up and down on that stage that afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not going to take anything away from the two that are sitting to my left and to my right because they also received a lot of awards. And just to go back to a second is we always want our cannabis to taste like the place, right? We want it to taste like our farm. So whether or not they're smoking Mom's Weed or Margie's Magic or Amalfi or Whitethorn Rose, people can start to identify different flavors and different feelings that they remember that had come off Huckleberry Hill Farms or Ridgeline Farms or Mattole Valley Sungrown. And that's where we really take pride into figuring out how to make it taste more like the place where it was grown.
Yeah, yeah. When I think about, like, because we have a lot of friends that are grape growers and winemakers, and then, you know, we start talking about, like, what's going on with the soil and, you know, the appellations and terroir. Do you guys like to geek out on that with one another? How are those conversations when you're talking about the soil and what you're doing?
I mean, I think the climate, to me, you know, the microclimates we have is the most interesting. Like, I could give one of my strains that, you know, will not produce good on round one with cold weather to another farm like Love Humboldt or something. And he has this, you know, farm that's down by the river, and it gets, you know, he grows right into the native soil, and these buds get giant. And I'm like, oh, great. So this strain, you know, I think that's kind of the most interesting is how, you know, the microclimates. But yeah, with food, with everything. I mean, I really feel like they're turning this market into more like a price point, right? You know, like more worried about who could buy the cheapest weed, who could grow the weed for cheapest. And I think that's an obvious way that they've always pushed out the small people. Like, you know, I mean, I went into the mall in Santa Rosa. It was completely dead, right? Our mall here, dead. Just like Amazon, it's the same thing. It's the big companies. They slowly they knock the price down so far that we're all out, and then they could do whatever they want with the price. So right now, you know, I mean, I guess I kind of veered off from that question, but right now I feel like, you know, we're just trying to produce, you know, I feel like we're doing actually the same thing we've been doing, but now, you know, with people like you that are giving us a voice, you know, we're really getting it out there to the world. You know, I'm really excited about being able to make my own strains, and, you know, which I've done my whole life, but now people know us and they kind of trust what we're doing. And for that has been really the most exciting thing for this last little bit, is just to be able to produce, make, search for the next winner, you know, and with people actually knowing and trusting us, that's actually kind of working for us now.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, I think when we look at, you know, the average retail consumer, they don't understand as much about that as they should to get them excited about what's going on. When you see a lot of people, well, and I think this is like people that are kind of more immersed in cannabis culture, there's a lot more following of like the trap farmers and the different things that they're doing with the competitions. But the fact of the matter is there are amazing craft farmers like you guys that are doing amazing flowers, and we need to really turn on a whole other level of consumer to that, instead of, you know, I got this, you know, ounce of smalls for $35, and what does that mean for the quality of their experience, and how much more of that do they actually have to smoke to get what they need out of that?
The weirdest thing is the price is always the same in the dispensaries. That's what I still don't understand.
Right?
With all the taxes and regulations, the consumers still have to pay so much money. We aren't making any, and it just doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah, and the consumers don't understand where that's coming from.
Well, it's not fair for them.
It's not. It's not. And they also redirect their frustration towards either the dispensaries or the growers or the companies that are creating the products. And that was one thing when I still worked for a dispensary. I used to explain to them, like, okay, we're going to have, you know, it's almost like a combination of economics and stoner civics 101. It's like, if you know, the reason that your cannabis, the price is so high, or your favorite product or grower isn't available, is because they have been pushed out of the market. And every time that cannabis changes hands, you've got this excise tax amongst all the other taxes that are going on. And the fact that you have farmers who have had family farms that have been in there for generations, and a lot of them are not cultivating because they can't afford the fees. And then all of a sudden their eyes get wide and they're like, well, what can I do? And it's like, well, you know, the regulators do what they're told. But the people who depend on your votes to keep their jobs, they make these decisions. And they have an outdated view of who you are. So it's really, really time to come out of the cannabis closet and say, you know, I contribute to society, I pay taxes, I use cannabis, and I vote. Because a lot of these choices are made because these people have a very outdated view of who, you know, we are. They also have big corporate cannabis in their ear making suggestions. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing a lot of on the federal level. And so people need to come out and say it, because these elected officials' jobs should be on the line over these choices they're making.
There's definitely, I feel like, lots of different rules that could help. Obviously, direct to consumers. There's definitely ways we could make this work, but with a lot of those ways, it's going to take money out of, the government's pocket, with the taxes and so forth. So there is options still for people like us that are doing branding and products, which there's a real small amount of us now. When this started, I would say, what was there, probably a few thousand different brands in Humboldt County. We're probably down to about 20 at this point. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's low. And for us to get our stuff on shelves, I would say we spend money to get our stuff on shelves. I don't think we actually make it when it comes down to everybody, there's always discounts and people want the boat or the BOGOs or whatever like that, and then we're paying so many different little ways all the way there. And then there's products that doesn't sell or what. I'm just saying, by the end of the day, you have to have a lot of money to be able to maintain keeping your product on shelves. And a lot of these big companies are paying for their shelf space, which that's the last thing we could do.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of that, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, and it seemed like some retail places were starting to pull away from that because they wanted to support more of the smaller industry, but not enough has been done. And I feel like the distro model that we have in California, thank you Southern Spirits, has really did a lot to decimate the small farmer. And one of the biggest things, I think, when we're looking at not just California, but nationally, is the fact that, and this goes beyond cannabis even, of course we're going to always have corporations, but we need to start getting back to small business because the money stays in the communities and we give people jobs. And that's what's going to help us. So that's going to be how people are actually, once again, able to afford to own a home even. And if we can figure out a way to encourage people to not only buy local, but also talk to the state about the fact of if you lowered your taxes, honestly, Jason, I don't know how much money they would lose if they lowered some of this, because the amount of participation by the public with the cannabis marketplace would go up so much. There would be so many more purchases. I think they'd be making more in taxes.
Yeah, I think it's the general consumer now is paying something like 27% tax. And then meanwhile we have, these are some of the big problems with the current system. The Emerald Triangle used to, I remember reading it was estimated supplied 75% of this country with their cannabis. Now we have a situation where we have these other regions that didn't exist before that are growing legal cannabis. That's one part of the situation. The other part of the situation is the way Prop 64 went down, and jurisdictions that don't have an ordinance, like neighboring counties like Siskiyou, they're actually excluded from law enforcement funding from Prop 64. So you have this situation where you have this huge explosion of legal weed in new areas, and then black market weed exploding in these other jurisdictions. And meanwhile, the legacy growing regions who are trying to do it right are, going bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's the big picture economics of how they've failed at this are huge. And the winners are few and far between, And, even, we're seeing exodus in California. We're seeing failure of some of the big MSOs. They're pulling out. They don't want to do business here. So it's like none of this is working. It's not working for law enforcement. It's not working for reducing, illicit market and the crimes that come along with that. It's not working for the consumer because they're getting a very limited, there used to be an understanding when somebody bought product of where that came from. We got this from, that same farm, we got it from last year up in Humboldt that always it's the really good stuff. The system has disconnected us from the consumer. And like you said, even in the 215 days where bud tenders were selecting buds out of a jar and you could put they could smell it. You could talk to them about, we got this from up in Humboldt or wherever. That is largely all gone. And we are almost forbidden from interacting with our consumers.
Yeah, and see, that's not right. And I have to just as an aside, the smell jars, piss me off because, and when I was still training people behind the bar, I'd see these. Well, first off, it's like, I'm always like, why would you push your nose up against a smell jar that everyone else has smelled? And then they're shaking it like they're playing Yahtzee. So like all the trichomes are on the bottom and you just have these really bad looking like buds that are no representation of what's even in the jar. It's profane.
The big thing is that we need to get this retail model doesn't really work for weed. Like that's
Right.
not how people want to buy their weed. That's not how traditionally you got it. And so until we can get to where we can have actual direct to consumer interface and shipping, I don't really see how this, works on this level.
Yeah,
We should be able to sell direct.
absolutely.
And sometimes I have to question, do they really want it to work? Because the solution seems so easy, and there are a bunch of smart people that created this industry, and for them to still be permitting farms in the state of California with the oversaturation, without the ability to get through it with retail, they already know there's about 20 million pounds being produced with only the ability to get rid of 4 million pounds. Yet they're still continuing to permit farms. So either they know we're selling it to the East Coast, or I just can't figure it out, or they're trying to drown out the smallest of farmers so those big corporations that keep donating to their election funds can survive. So when federal legalization comes up, they'll be the only ones that exist.
Yeah, that's real. And I wonder about that myself too. I also wonder when we start to get into federal legalization and we look at interstate commerce, how that would be able to revive the small farms.
It's not.
You don't think?
Absolutely not.
I think that we will have a shot. I think there's going to be like a moment where everybody's going to want our weed.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everywhere's going to start growing it for way cheap. And next thing you know, it's going to be,
Yeah.
Walmart shelves.
Organically, I think that's kind of happening now, right? I don't know if it's because there's less and less small farmers every year,
right,
or if people are just being educated and are sick of the gelatos, the ice cream cakes, the Gush Mints, and now are gravitating towards these unique legacy strains that the small farmers growing that have a story behind them. But I also think that it's important for the consumer to know when they pay $65 at the retail stand for my quarter jars, I make about $3.50 to $4 per jar. So in between me and them is a huge amount of money that's getting gobbled up by this industry. And it's really limiting their access to some amazing sun-grown product that can heal a lot of the ailments that they have or whatever they're suffering from. So that's true crime that's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would blow people's minds if they realize like how little you get out of that. I mean, it's fucking insane. Excuse my French.
I think this is, I heard it said recently by actually a professor from Cal Poly that's working in the cannabis world, and he was giving the feedback that it's like, we do all this policy work and we're trying to work with regulators and legislatures. Mm-hmm. And what he was saying is that the only way there's going to be real change is if this becomes a social movement. Because this is about the consumer mm-hmm. and the product they're getting mm-hmm. and the farmers that are producing it. And like Johnny said, there's this giant void in the middle that's filled with weird regulations and taxes and middlemen who serve no real purpose and don't benefit either the farmer or the consumer, but it's all by mandate. This is how the system is designed. So,
yeah.
We need that I think is the big challenge, is like, how do we connect with the consumers to where they demand something different?
True. I mean, I think that, as much as we're starting to normalize it from the government perspective, the stigma is so strong that common sense is just thrown out the window when they're taking cannabis into consideration. And Johnny, I think I might have told you about this when we were talking, but when I was on the oversight committee for San Francisco, the controller's office did this report, and they were talking about, and this was right before the pandemic, and they were talking about the price per gram of cannabis and why it was going up, and they said it was due to competition. And I had to get on the mic, and I was like, if you know anything about economics, that is not how it works. The price goes down due to competition. The price is going up because you've put unreasonable, financial burden on the cultivators. And then when you look at all the other things that are baked into the price, and then on top of it, how expensive it is just to do business in California. And then you get to the dispensary level, and especially when you're in a major metropolitan area, then it becomes a real estate issue too, because how much per square foot are you being charged for your dispensary space, much less your inventory space? And people were like, what a revelation. I'm like, this is not a revelation, people. This is business. And why aren't we looking at cannabis the same way we look at anything else? I mean, sure, you can say it's a controlled substance, but and I hate to make the comparison, but alcohol isn't dealing with this shit.
No. It's a $75 in California to become a direct-to-consumer shipper in wine is a application and a $70 license. And then you can sell wine out of your winery to the consumer. So all of this stuff really just comes down to the, normalization. And so until we quit looking and they quit looking at cannabis as this completely different foreign product, none of it makes sense. The rules don't make sense. The regulations don't make sense. The market doesn't make sense, because it's like we've created it. We put it in this weird box where it requires all these special rules to where we can't get a permit to, hardly to bring tourism through our, there's so many rules that are exclusive to cannabis, including like land use taxes and all these things that just don't make sense if we just normalized it. And so with, talking about federal legalization and rescheduling, it's like, what is that going to mean? Like, if they reschedule it, now what? We're going to be regulated by the FDA?
Right.
Like the FDA is going to come onto my farm and shut me down. They're going to be like, this is not a sterile situation for manufacturing. And I'm going to say, yeah, no, it's not sterile at all. It's a dirty old farm. So like that, I don't know where we go, until we normalize this as an agricultural product. We're going to have a serious uphill battle on all levels.
Yeah, and I think that seeing it as an agricultural product is part of the normalization. It's a damn plant. This is not, these are not laboratories. And, yes, we want to make sure that people are growing things, with the correct nutrients and what have you. And, people aren't putting strange chemicals for growth, and cannabis is a bioaccumulator, so anything is grown in and around it leaches, but that's why we have you guys, because these things.
And this is where I think we have an amazing opportunity, and this is the light at the end of the tunnel for the small farmers currently that I see that Dylan and Jason are looking at, that I think more of the small farmers need to look at is Big Ag wants competition. They want us to grow Gush Mints. They want us to grow the gelatos, but we're not going to grow those. We're going to highlight and educate the consumer why we've always grown these legacy genetics and what our parents showed us how to do. And we're going to share those amazing new strains with the world. And those are strains that are only grown on our individual farms that nobody else in the world has, like Whitethorn Rose and Lance and tropical cherry crosses that Dylan's making. And as long as we stay tight and close together and work with each other, like Dylan's growing the Paradise Pine that I've only shared with his farm this year. And Jason and I did a cross together called Paradise Rose with his award-winning Lance cross with the Whitethorn Rose. So we've eliminated that competition with Big Ag, and now our challenge has changed to really just educate the consumer that we're growing something different, and if you want it, you have to come to our farm.
I think that's awesome. And I'll say, okay, but I was going to say, well, Jason, you say what you're going to say, and then I want to talk about the beauty of Sungrown, because our listeners need to understand why that's so important.
I mean, that's true. Blank.
If you don't get it out when you can get it out.
I know. Well, no, I mean, really, I was just going back to what Dylan was saying, you know, and with a lot of that regulatory process, there's so many things I wanted to do on my farm, like a nursery license or this or that. But I'm so just freaked out. I spent 8 years on my little farm doing paperwork and spending money. So the idea of any other permitting or licensing fees or just going through the process, I'm scared. I just don't want to do it. I'm burned out. It's not even scared. I'm burned out.
Yeah, but you created this amazing strain that nobody else in the world has with your dad and both of your kids, and now it's in 33 different states with cookies.
Well, you know what? I mean, and a lot of that too is being able to, you know, get to these people all over the world. I mean, I am getting hit up constantly from, you know, Australia and Germany and Israel and I mean everywhere, and not just, I mean, all over the country for sure, but you know, all over the world, people are hearing our stories and they know, you know, what we grow, they know what we're doing. And so I do feel there will be, with federal legalization, if it ever happens, I mean, that would be, they know we're real, they know who we are, and that is really what we're really working for, to the point where they could, you know, they always ask, how could I get your stuff in Texas? How can I get your stuff in, you know, in New York or whatever? And it's like, you gotta wait. I mean, there's nothing else I could say, but I do think because we don't grow tons of weed, that we would actually be able to sell what we grow pretty easy for a little while if we did get that opportunity.
Yeah.
Sungrown.
Sungrown. Let's talk about it. There is nothing like the sun, and people don't understand that. Whenever somebody tells me, oh yeah, I've got these LED lights, full spectrum of the sun, I'm always like, sure, bud.
That's true.
Yeah. The sun is amazing, and Jason talked earlier about the microclimates. That's what, you know, grow rooms generally run on very similar parameters. You know, they have their temperature, humidity, all of these things are textbook. Ours vary incredibly. You know, my good friends, Clearwater Farms, live up the hill from me at, I think, 1,500 feet or so. Their nights might be 70 degrees, and I'm dropping down to 52. Like, these are the variations, and these have totally different effects, you know. So when it's sun grown, the sun, you can't beat the sun, but there's so much more than that. It's the nighttime temperatures, what ridgeline affects the fog, and, or, you know, who has fog, who doesn't have fog. These are all the little details that really make up what we're growing to be something unique.
You're in the ground. You're next to the river with the wind. You don't even tie your plants up. I don't even know how they don't break to pieces. Like, it's incredible. I'm jealous.
Well, and it's the practices too, and that's what is the beauty of this. It's like corporate cannabis, and it's like, you know, I finally got them to quit sending them to me, but I used to get these magazines, you know, Greenhouse Grower, and it's just like page after page after page of the same thing, and I'm like, this is so boring. Like, cool, it's a new type of greenhouse with different lighting in it, like you're saying, but it's like, it's also mechanical, and there's nothing unique about it. And not to say that they can't grow some really pretty weed that, you know, checks this box of looks.
Oh yeah,
but,
aesthetics,
you know,
absolutely.
Same thing, go back to your hothouse tomato. It's like, thing looks nice, but doesn't smell or taste like anything. And so what we have is unique. And it's not just the sun, it's the unique microclimates, and it's the shared knowledge. And that is really the biggest thing. It's like, last week I had one batch of plants that was just doing some weird things, and so I know my friend Colin out in Willow Creek is growing it. I have a friend over here in Whitethorn growing it, and so I'm calling them. We're comparing notes, sharing knowledge, and that's what makes this work. It's hundreds of years of combined education of knowledge.
Yeah, I think that Sungrown has gotten a bad rap in the past because sometimes people's first Sungrown experience is something that a friend grew, and they weren't necessarily a good grower. Because I know, and also the fact that people always think that price points are kind of denote value as well. And I remember when I was in the dispensaries and we'd get these beautiful Sungrown flowers, and I would tell people, the reason this is less expensive than the indoor cultivations is because those guys have to pay PG&E. That's the difference.
I think if we're sticking on the sun-grown topic, is that Jason and I and some other farmers did an experiment with Columbia University a few years back, maybe 3 years back now, and had a paper actually published, indoor versus outdoor, and really talking about the terroir and why is outdoor cannabis better than indoor cannabis. And, he was able to prove, Colin Knuckles out of Columbia, he's the head chemist in Columbia University, really describes in this paper how the terpene, the terpenoid, what are they called? Terpenoid, the walls in the lining of that terpenoid are created completely different because it's subjected to the rain, the wind, the hot, the cold, and it creates a thicker wall around that membrane. And so when you harvest it and you dry it and you cure it and it sits in a jar or it sits in the basement being cured for 6 months, the longevity of that flower lasts a lot longer than indoor, where it doesn't have that thick membrane around the terpenoid. And it's an interesting paper. You should check it out. It's a lot more. It's a way deeper than I explained. But there's a reason why all these manufacturers and hash makers are chasing down some of this amazing sun-grown. It's not because it's cheaper. It's actually now more expensive than indoor flower.
That's it. And I think it should be. People should be appreciating it more. And people don't understand that not only do terpenes create the scent and a lot of the spectrum of feel, but that's the plant's defense system.
What about the carbon footprint? I mean, bottom line. Let's just throw everything out of the way and just say, how much does 1,000 light indoor take? How much energy to produce that?
Right.
For us, it's like my plants are outside under the sun. Like, I actually just took my greenhouse covers off, right? Woo, straight sun. My plants are just reaching up. They're so happy. Wind's blowing through it. And, and now with testing, which we never had, I've never tested anything until 8 years ago when legalization happened. I'm testing stuff because I do some mixed light as well. And the sun-grown's coming out, in the 30s. When, like, even stuff under the light, it might taste, it might look better, but it's coming out, 25, 24, 23%. So I feel like even with that, it's more potent, and I mean, it's just it's natural, and we aren't making, we aren't taking a lot of energy out of the world, and we're,
Yeah, and it's got to be more nuanced, because when you're looking at sun-grown cannabis, that whole experience helps the plant express many more cannabinoids as well, and so your experience is going. Because just straight up THC, it's fine and good, but you need everything in there together to create it.
Makes you feel better.
Yeah.
It really does. It's like straight sun-grown. It's, it's something, like I said, being a kid, being out there picking leaves with my dad, this big, beautiful plant, and just, it was just amazing watching the love he had for it. And I grow small enough where I could look at every single plant and give every plant love. And I know if there's one plant that's messed up, and I will call Johnny, be like, Johnny, what's up with our strain right here? And that's a crazy thing too about, like his strains, they're made in this area that gets totally different sun than mine. Well, not that much sun over here in this little zone. And I'll grow one of his up there and they're fully budded. They're like almost done, where mine are just starting to bud. It's like these plants are learning their climates, and they can only be grown in certain climates.
Right.
They're pretty spectacular when you think about it. And I think a lot of people are overlooking how special a plant is, and they're just growing it mass quantities as cheap as they can, and just I preferably, like, I would love to have some of Dylan's over, just something in some shiny little packaging that we wouldn't even get to smell or look at, right?
Right.
A lot of people are just buying it because of the packaging.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
and there's nothing sadder than auto trim flower.
Auto trim.
Yeah.
Automated.
Packaging and marketing, that's what, there's big marketing companies out there, and that's what's selling weed. I heard on another podcast recently somebody talking about, or on the radio actually, they were a distributor packager in Southern California, and they had product that wasn't moving, and they just rebranded it the exact same package and made it like kind of like real, like poppin' loud, kind of cartoony, and it was flying off the shelf. And this is what, so it's like,
put a light up little jar.
Like crazy packaging. Like people aren't, that's how they're buying,
Yeah.
and it's, and going back to the, like, how did we get here where indoor became this, became the standard? First of all, I'll say, since we're all just talking real here, the product that ended up in the dispensaries, outdoor sun-grown, like there was a small bit of the market up here, farmers that I know, that were selling into those dispensaries. Those dispensaries were often terrible for pricing, where they wanted to pay, you'd go down to Southern California, go through this dog and pony show. It was not generally a very good system at all. And so what I saw is a lot of the sun-grown that was in those stores was really low quality, because up here, the high quality, we were selling our weed as indoor, basically, because it passed as indoor. So we're pushing out sun-grown into the whole country that is passing as indoor. And meanwhile, then what the consumer's learning is outdoor is either, like you said, what their neighbor grew on their balcony, or, this crap that somebody couldn't sell. So they finally took it to a dispensary.
Larfy discards.
Look at that. We reaped the benefits of getting a higher price point, but we screwed ourselves in the end by selling it as indoor.
It's true, I think.
I think it's really important for your listeners to understand that not only, are we creating a business and growing to support our families, but we're growing because we love to grow this plant, and it's still magical for us, and we still do it because we love interacting with the plant. And if there was one suggestion besides knowing your farmer that I could give to your listeners, is that if you ever have the opportunity to grow your own plant, growing your own is so magical. And I won't do it justice explaining it, but when you start something and you give it life and you start a seed and you grow it throughout its life cycle, where it has to rely on you to water it, to feed it, to nurture it, and then you have to cut it down at the end of the year, that's always hard, and then you hang it upside down and you dry it and cure it. And then the magic happens when you share it to your friends and you look across the table and they're smiling, or you healed some kind of ailment that they have. That's where you feel the pride, and that's when you'll understand why we do what we do.
And John, you just talking like that gave me such flashbacks of the childhood memories of like the big potlucks, the big harvest parties. Like when our family had, when our community had harvest time, we'd get together and we'd have these huge celebrations, and it was just I literally get goosebumps because it was a really special time. Now it's just like, cuts. Could you sell it? You're almost stressed out because you got to harvest and you got to spend money to harvest it and to trim it and do all this stuff you might not get back. So it's just the difference in time is crazy. But you're talking like that about the plant, I felt it.
Yeah, the heart's still here. It's just that the stress sometimes makes it hard. I gotta hand it to you guys. Your flowers are just so full of soul. And, I just want our listeners to know that, if you want to have a true experience, like it's the difference. It really is. Like, we're going back to the tomatoes. It's like, if you want something that you will actually get a very full yet nuanced experience that will, I'm going to, at the risk of sounding hippy-dippy, not only, support your body, but feed your soul. Sungrown is where it's at, and with the small farmers. And please, when you go to dispensaries, vote with your dollars, because they want your sale. And if they know that small craft farmers are what you're interested in, and all you have to do is try a flower once to know the difference, and you will be changed forever. It's a huge, huge difference. So when you go to your dispensaries, ask where these flowers come from. Ask how they're grown. Ask about the farmers, because if you're at a good dispensary, they should know something about the people who are growing the flowers that they're selling, and support that. So as we close today, and I know we could get into a whole lot of other conversations around this, what are some things that you're hopeful about, and what are some things that you want our listeners to know before we close out today?
I'm hopeful for some more real direct to consumer, shipping. I think that's where it becomes maybe fun again. I mean, I still enjoy my job, and people say, why are you still doing this? I say, well, because I work from home. I get to work outside. You know, I answer to myself. So there's a lot of reasons why I do it. And I love gardening and I love landscaping. And these are all the things that it is. But, you know, what I think would also be fun is to be able to, you know, have more, you know, direct, you know, have a website and ship and talk to somebody back in Kentucky and connect with them and send it to them. And, you know, I don't think prices will ever be anything like they were. Those days are gone. But you know, to be able to, I look forward to hopefully being able to build a business that is something that is an actual business that can be a legacy farm that I can hand down, hopefully one of my 3 kids or maybe a grandkid in the future. Somebody's going to really want to stick with it, and it's worth preserving, I believe.
Absolutely.
Man, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's like, I mean, really, I'm hopeful a lot of my friends don't have to move from this place, because a lot of them are, you know, they're pretty scared right now. You know, but on a positive hopefulness, I really would hope to see, you know, some of our brands make it big and be able to, with that, we'd be able to help support a lot of people in this area, you know, have a lot of people grow whitethorn rose, you know, grow lance, and be able to see, you know, the Huckleberry Hills in New York on a sign somewhere. And with that, you know, that money will come back to this area. You know, like Dylan said, is direct to consumer is huge. All the amazing people that contact me that would love to smoke my herb, I'm really hopeful one day they can smoke my herb. And I really think it's possible. There shouldn't be a reason why not, besides all the walls that are in between us. But yeah, I'm just, hopefully we survive.
Yeah, I got to agree with both these gentlemen, and just, you know, I like to look at the whole industry as like this puzzle, pieces of puzzle on the table, and we're slowly figuring out how to put one connected to the other. And, you know, maybe my downfall is that I expect change to happen a lot quicker, and the reality of it is that, you know, it's relatively a new industry, and I want it to happen faster. I want the small farmer to be okay. And I want to see the industry thrive. It's hard not knowing sometimes, like, where you're going and what you're doing, and I'm trying to listen to my gut and stick with it and continue on, and you know, just support my local farmers and stuff. So not sure where I'm going with that, but I think you just need to support your local farmers. Sungrown, at least try it, give it a chance. And while I'm sitting here working on the farm, all I can really think about is, you know, those people that really do the groundwork, that really end up helping me and my fellow farmers. And I would feel very like I didn't really tell your consumers what they need to hear. But if you have an extra dollar, or if you can help an organization that will help a mass group of small farmers, please reach out to HCGA or Origins Council and help them help us.
Yes, thank you for saying that. And also for those of you who like to write letters and get out. I mean, and even if you don't, you should. Getting civically involved is one of the most powerful things we can do. Talk to your Congress people, talk to your senators. Let them know where you're at with it. Let them know their jobs are on the line. They need to hear from us. They need to know what's going on and take it seriously, because we're not a bunch of silly stoners sitting at home eating Cheetos. We're living our lives. We're doing things. We're paying taxes. And we deserve to have not only access to beautiful sun-grown flowers, but we should be upholding our small farmers. And that goes beyond cannabis. But we're talking about cannabis today. So please, get involved. And then for people who want to follow you guys on social media and see what you're doing, how do they do that?
My farm is Mattole Valley Sungrown, and I'm on Instagram, Mattole Valley Sungrown.
Yeah, and we all participate with the Instagram a little bit. So I'm Huckleberry Hill Farms is my Instagram. And if you want to check out the farm and what it looks like, I have a website called pickhumboldt.com.
Yeah, Ridgeline Farms on Instagram. Ridgelinefarms.com is my website. And, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I think it's just under Jason Gellman, my name. But, yeah.
And if you go to your local dispensary and you don't see flowers from these fine gentlemen, ask for it.
Shout out to 7 Stars.
Yes, 7 Stars, Z all the way.
That's a dispensary owner that cares.
Yeah.
And shout out to the consumers that do care, that are buying Sungrown. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you want to experience these and you want to see more events, start talking to the people who are working in cannabis and events, because we need to have more public consumption events so that these farmers can come and talk about what they're doing, so we can highlight this more. Guys, thank you so much for spending time with me today. We have so much more to discuss and unpack, and there's so much work that we have to do. We're going to do it. We're going to make this happen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.